they are, it's kind of a microwave type of idealistic. I want you to be at this place and this time, right then and there, almost immediately. Or it's almost like having someone give you a puzzle and you want it put together, already assembled. You don't want to have any type of dealing or working or any type of effort um, to putting together the pieces. You want it already assembled, already perfect. And it's unrealistic to have such high expectations that you want someone to reach that. Number one, you are not willing to put the work in to get there yourself. And number two, you have it so high that it is unattainable for anyone else to reach. So you automatically put you both at a deficit starting out.
Whoa, that's big. Putting both of you at a deficit starting out. Where do you go from there? Right? I mean, like where do you go from there? What do you think? Okay, so when you brought up this topic, was there anything going on for you specifically that raised this topic in your mind, or is this just a general concept from the things that you see in your work every day? Like what brought this up in your mind when we started talking about you coming on the show?
One of the things that brought it to mind almost immediately was just dealing with relationships. I deal with a lot of people who are either in exclusive relationships, or they're already married, or just being around the culture of, seeing on social media what couples and what men and women are saying every day. This is what I want them to be like. This is what I want my partner to be like. This is what I want them to have. This is what, and it's a whole list
Yeah.
of things that, excuse me, it's a whole list of things that they want their idea, quote unquote, partner to have. And there's nothing wrong with having preference. There's nothing wrong with having standards. There's nothing wrong with having a list, so to speak, of things that you want within a mate. However, what I'm seeing is not that on the healthy spectrum. What I'm seeing is I want them to have this. I want them to already have that. I want them to have these things. And if they don't have these things, then I don't even want to be entertained. It's almost like they've turned dating into an interview, and now you can't even just genuinely meet a person and
Mhm.
find out more about them without feeling like you've just sat down to an interrogation. So
Yeah.
now you've already got somebody that feels on the defense. And when you're on the defense, you're not thinking about letting your guard down and trying to, just have a genuine conversation. You're thinking about, wait a minute, I feel tense. I don't like this environment. I don't like how I feel. And it's more of trying to find out information about someone as opposed to getting to know someone. Those are not the same things.
You nailed it. Like we can mic drop and be good. Like you nailed so many points there, because the first one that I want to touch on is when you said that dating, it's like an interview. And in the past, I had talked about I don't date, I don't date. I called it like an audition. I felt like I was auditioning for a role that I hoped I got chosen for. And I didn't like feeling like that. So to use the term interview, it is the exact same thing. You're hoping you get the part, but you're being picked apart before you even get started, right? So that is the deficit that you mentioned. Where do you think we go from here? Because you mentioned preference and standards. And I think that's where people are getting them mixed with all these expectations. Is there hope for relationships in the future?
I absolutely think so, and but I think the thing is that there's a big difference between allowing um, the social media and kind of Hollywood type of culture decide for you, as opposed to you deciding who matches up with your
Oh, I
personal
kind of lost you for a minute.
core values. Can you hear me now?
Mhm.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep, I can.
Okay.
Yes.
I think there are a lot. I think a lot of
Yep.
times that we get lost. We get lost in trying to allow social media or
Hmm.
the outside world, outside of our lives, dictate what is someone's criteria for the things that they should reach or have, as opposed to you actually just aligning and connecting with someone who has the same kind of core values that you have. And I think that a lot of times we subconsciously don't think that what we have as our core values are exciting enough.
Hmm.
So because they're not exciting, quote unquote, enough, or it doesn't seem as grand,
Hmm.
so we start adding onto a list that no one else can meet,
Right.
and you're comparing them. You're the reason why they're unrealistic is because you are comparing them to someone else's cropped and edited version.
Hmm.
You're comparing your real life to someone else's trailer or snippet that you see from a distance, that you think what their life is like from the outside view, not knowing they're only showing the best version of themselves.
Yes.
And you're comparing that and saying, hey, Jane looks so good on social media. Why can't I be like Jane? Well, you don't know that Jane is only showing you the filtered, the
Hmm.
cropped, and the edited versions of her life. And you're not seeing what she looks like in the morning. You're not seeing what she goes through on a day-to-day basis. And what we're doing is we're comparing and saying, well, my core values are not exciting enough, so let me add some other things in there. And when you do that, you automatically put yourself and someone else at a disadvantage, because now they are in a competition with someone they didn't even sign up for.
Yes. And do you think that it's possible for people when they're looking at this picture perfect over here and then they see this picture perfect over here, that they're almost picking the pieces that they enjoy out of all these different, these different profiles basically, and creating this dream person, and that's where part of the huge unrealistic expectation comes from, is that they're like, I want a piece of that and I want a piece of that, and they're trying to make this ideal instead of getting to know somebody as real, and giving that a
Absolutely.
chance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because what you're doing is you're planning and you're sowing seeds of it's discord without you knowing it, because what you're doing is this person signed up to come meet and talk and get to know you, but they don't know that when they sat down, that you're comparing what they believe and what they're going through and what they look like and what their life is like compared to five other people and yours, because you don't think your life is exciting enough, or you don't think that your life is great enough or interesting enough. So now it becomes a compare type. Okay, whose grass is greener?
Mhm.
Not realizing you're comparing your authentic grass to someone else's turf.
Yes. And just going into our friendship here for a minute, when you said that you don't think that your life is exciting enough, right? It made me think around, I think it was around Christmas time, because you and I have been friends like for years. And I remember just checking in, Merry Christmas, how you doing? And I chuckled because I said, I'm just chilling here watching Andrea Bocelli, like boring kind of thing. I was actually doing that. I was thinking, I'm not exciting right now. You know what I mean? And you were like, what do you mean? That's great. So I just realized, like right now, based on what you're discussing, because we're being real here, that I actually did that to myself. I didn't think
Right,
I was
right.
exciting enough. And so how do you what do you what do you think we need to do as just human beings to try to step out of that?
I think the thing is that you said something that was key. You said when you said it, you didn't think that it was interesting. But my question is, who put that thought into your spirit and into your head that you sitting there having a peaceful moment was not good enough on a Christmas weekend? How did that get there? And if you know that had to come from somewhere where you bought into, man, because I'm not out doing such and such, man, what I'm doing is boring. And the thing is, I've learned that when you are not satisfied or you have not learned to be fulfilled, that you will constantly chase approval for the simplest of things. I always tell people, don't get boredom and peace mixed up. A
Oh,
lot of
that's
times
huge.
people,
That's
a
huge
lot
right
of
there.
times people who are used to drama and toxicity and just always being in a unhealthy environment or relationship, when they're used to that chaos and dysfunction, when they get around somebody who is healthy, somebody who is caring, and somebody who is loving, all of a sudden, because you're used to being in a dramatic and drama filled toxic environment or around those type of people, when you get around someone who's healthy and someone who's peaceful, man, I don't want to be around them. They're boring.
Yeah.
No, they're not boring. The problem is that you're so used to being around dysfunction that when you get around functionality, when you get around peace, you're unfamiliar with it, so you call it boredom.
Yeah.
And it's disrespectful to peace and the spirit of peace and the culture and atmosphere of peace, that it's disrespectful to call it boredom, because you'll look at it like, man, well, something as simple as you trying to rest. You'll feel like, man, I should be up and I should be doing something, because if I'm not doing something, I'm automatically lazy. It's that, again, we go right back to those seeds that were sown, whether it was sown in our spirit, whether it was from family, whether it was from close friends, that our lifestyle of trying to pursue something that is peaceful is not good enough. It's
Hmm.
not interesting enough. It's not exciting. I would prefer being peaceful. I've had to learn it. It's something that's learned. I've learned to value. I know the difference between being around peace and being around chaos. And it's something as simple as being able to do this.
Yes. Yes.
Taking that exhale, taking that inhale, or versus somebody who is, there's a huge difference. So I think it starts with you being able to say, you know what, I'm okay not being happy. And I know that may sound crazy, but
Hmm.
I've learned that today's society doesn't mean happy the way you think it is. Happy in today's language and society is, I'm happy, which means as long as my needs are being met at the moment, that's what happy is. I've learned to start saying, you know what? I've learned to be fulfilled, which means even if my needs are not met, or if my conditions are not perfect, I'm okay. I'm okay.
I love that. I love that. And I want to drop this in here because you nailed several points that I love this because I learned so much from being here and having these conversations as well. And coming from a toxic and emotionally toxic abusive relationship, everything that you mentioned about the rest, today I still struggle with resting, because if I was resting, it was there was always something more I should be doing, I should be getting done, that, and it's a challenge to really push through that. And we almost create our own chaos and drama, because you're right, that is what we are accustomed to. We're it's almost an addiction ourselves, that we're comfortable in that type of environment, because at least we know how it goes down, at least we know the pattern, at least
Right.
it's safe.
Right.
So you nailed it. You nailed it, and I learned so much in just those few minutes that you spoke. We have some listeners tuning in, and in the beginning, some of them caught, or they missed me introducing you. So I want to reintroduce you. We are speaking with Jairrod A. Burch this evening. He is coming to us out of Ohio. Jairrod is a TEDx speaker from Brains Magazine. He is an executive contributor, and he is an author and a value life coach specialist. So we are honored to be here, but I am more honored because I can call him friend. We've been friends for several years. So he's seen my journey, I've seen his journey, and I'm just grateful for him being our first live guest here on the radio show. So Jairrod, when
That.
you, oh, go ahead. Oh,
Oh,
um,
no, no, no. Go right ahead. I was just going to say, just the fact that you were able to. That's the key thing that you're saying even now, because seeing my journey and some of the things, and me being able to talk with you, we were able to build a genuine relationship, and real things come out of real relationships, but also false, fake things comes out of, relationships that are not based off authenticity. And a lot of times when people are basically in this kind of hookup culture, um, when people make and link up together, that's where the seed is sown. What is your expectation of this relationship? you know are you looking for a hookup? Are you looking for, and we set the tone right then and there. And our tone, the way we said it, it was based off of being authentic, it was based off of being real, and it was based off of respect. And therefore the fruit of that is this right here. We've always been connected, and to the outside world, this, we're on the radio, but you and me, this is a normal conversation between us,
yeah, yeah.
because this is what we established that came out of a real connection.
Yes, yes. And I think it's absolutely beautiful. So, as adults, I continued my Google search because we went into kind of what the definition was. But as adults, it says that we have the ability to look at our own values and beliefs and decide if we have unrealistic expectations. And I love that it said that, because you are the value person. You are the value coach. And so when I saw that it talked about, when we look, having that ability to look at our own values and beliefs, we can gauge, do we have unrealistic expectations? And do you think many of us actually sit back and ponder on that question? Like, do many of us actually look back at ourselves and ask, do we have unrealistic expectations on other people? Have you ever considered that question of yourself?
Absolutely. I think, though, what we need to first consider is, before we're adults, we are influenced first by our family and the environment that we are in and that we've grown up in. Because before we had an idea or a concept of what any type of expectation is, it was influenced and we were impacted by it, by where we came out of, our culture, our family. So that plays a huge part in how you choose to continue. Those seeds were planted in you at a younger age. So as you're growing up and you get to the stage where you are an adult, now you can make a decision. okay, what were some of the things that were good that I can adopt and, bring out as an adult? Or what was some of the things that I can say, you know what? I found that those things are not going to be helpful as an adult. We can make those choices as an adult, but our first influence happens around our, our surroundings. So my question is, who is influencing you? Who has influenced you? And as you become an adult, because just because you're older doesn't mean you're mature.
Yes.
It is not an option to grow older. It is an option to learn and become wiser, though. So because we have many adults that are grown in age, but mental stage or emotional intelligence, they are not there.
Yes.
And it is a choice whether you are going to learn and say, hey, I'm going to take meat from the bone and throw the bone away. Or some people take the meat and they take the bone, even though the bone was the thing that they were struggling with. Mm-hmm. So I think that once you get to a certain stage, you have to be able to become cognitive enough, and you have to be able to have that. That's why it's important who you have around you as an adult, because you're either going to have a support system or you're going to have a support group. And a support group are enablers. Anything that you say goes, anything that you do goes. They don't challenge you on anything. Everything that and those are the ones that breed that unrealistic expectation. But when you surround yourself and get around people.
I'm learning this too. We're going to break for a quick commercial and we'll pick up right when we get back. I'm learning my countdowns as well. We'll be right back. Hold tight.
No problem.
If you are trying to quit drinking or doing too many drugs, listen to me. You don't know me and we'll never meet. I had a problem like you once. I drank and used to party a little too much till it got out of control and almost ruined my life. I realized I needed help to fix my problem before it totally destroyed me. If you've tried to fix your drinking and drug problem and you know you can't do it alone, you need to call the National Treatment Advisors. They'll immerse you into a 30-day program to replace your old habits with new habits and totally change your life. And if you have PPO private health insurance, the entire program may be covered. Fix your problem right now before it gets any worse. Get clean. Call now and learn more. 877-247-1581. 877-247-1581. 877-247-1581.
Out of deck carpet giving you the blues? Tired of your old dingy and broken tile? Let my friends at the Floor Store in Cleburne, Texas give your home the makeover it deserves. This is Old Taco Joe coming to you for the Floor Store. Whether it's carpet, tile, wood flooring, or real wood laminate, the Floor Store can cover all of your flooring needs. Located at 405 West Henderson Street in Cleburne, Texas, owner Brent Harris can help. Shower tile, tub surrounds, even backsplashes. Give them a call today at 817-641-9444. The Floor Store, they got you covered.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
All right, and we are back. Thank you for our little break, and thank you to the sponsors and partners of our Relationships Radio through Joco Community. So, Jairrod, we are back, and we were really in the middle of a great subject of our topic of unrealistic expectations. So if you're just tuning in, I have Jairrod A. Burch with us tonight, and we are getting raw and real on some of the issues around unrealistic expectations. And when we were talking about the maturity level, that yes, we don't have the choice in growing in age, but we do have the choice in growing in maturity. And I like to think of it as, I've heard of, you've got your wounded child is walking around in an adult body. You've got your adapted child that's walking around in an adult body. And then you actually have a functioning adult. The majority that we see nowadays, honestly, is in that adapted child. They haven't quite gotten to that functioning adult state, but they've learned to adapt. But it's those wounds from back in the childhood that are so surface still that causes a lot of issues in relationships nowadays. Um, how do you begin to identify that in someone that maybe you're considering opening up to a relationship with? Like, how do we get to the point of identifying this early on? Do you think there's a way?
You mean as far as identifying something that is, as we would call a red flag? Is
Mm-hmm.
that what you mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess
Um,
I guess that is it, a red flag.
I think the thing is before we can recognize a red flag in someone else, we need to be able to be honest enough to recognize the red flags in us. And I think we've become a culture to where we are experts at identifying red flags in others, but novice when it comes to identifying with the things that are going on with us. And that all starts with accountability. And we don't like to use that word, but um, we know from an early age wrong from right. And there's a big difference between someone who does something that is unbeknownst to them versus someone who does something and knows better, but chooses not to do better. But when we're able to hold ourselves accountable and be honest with ourselves, then that's when we're able to identify it within someone else. But if you are a person who you don't have people around you to where, because number one, we are a product of some sort of where we come out of, the environment. It's hard to be what you have not seen. So if you have not seen accountability and what that looks like, you're going to take accountability as attack or a personal attack when you're an adult. But if you've seen accountability and you've seen someone who knows what it's like to say, hey, let me apologize to you because I did this wrong. So a lot of people have seen it coming up and then they continue that on. But a lot of people have not seen that and then they continue it on. But once we have come into, as an adult, someone who has experienced or had a small encounter with someone who has been genuine in your life, and they have shown us, hey, when I do something wrong, I'm going to come back to you and say, you know what? I'm going to take ownership of that. I think all of us, even if we have not seen it, we have encountered it.
Yes.
And we have the choice to say, man, that was healthy. Or, man, that's something that's unhealthy. I don't want to continue in. So I think before we identify it, in someone else, we need to be able to take that accountability, first of all, within us, so that we're able to discern that going forward in a healthy relationship, whether it be friendship or whether it be romantic.
Yes. Yes. And you nailed it, because it is a kind of put your own mask on first type of thing. This is something that so many of us actually have to work through. We have to work through before we get to that place. And I had been single for years. I lost my husband on Christmas Eve of 2018, and it was a hell of a ride to push through all of that and everything that came of it. But what I had realized, and this could be something for a lot of other people, is I had so much healing to do. And the only experience that I had to go on was the defense and that trauma and the chaos. And so anytime I would start to talk to somebody, it was pushing me to get through those things again. And it didn't feel good. I wasn't ready. So I would just pull back. And I think for people, it's so important to stress how imperative it is to really push through those things, to heal through those things. Because if you don't, it's almost like hitting that brick wall. You're going to go so far, and then you're going to be stopped. You're going to have to face it at some
Right.
point, at some time. So I have one comment here that I want to read, that Tish Ross said, healthy relationships start with healthy parenting as well as a healthy mental self-awareness. Trauma seeks trauma, and that is destructive. And I think that it's one of those things that sometimes we don't really even recognize the trauma, like where it's coming from. And
Mhm.
doing the work on myself, like I said, it was 4 years. I realized mine started back at 8 years old. 8 years old. Can you believe that? So doing the work on
Wow.
yourself is important. And my dad had left. My dad had
Right.
left. So it's amazing at what we carry today that came from way back. And if we don't pause to look at it, we're going to carry it with us every single day, every single day. So unrealistic expectations. I looked up, and there are some signs to recognize that there are patterns. And so I have 3 of them, and I want to share them with you, and I want to get your take on what you think of them. One of the signs to recognize, because some people might think like, no, I'm good. I don't have unrealistic expectations. Everybody else does, right? But one of them is you can feel stressed and upset when things don't go as planned, or the routine deviates slightly. So what
Right.
do you think
Right.
on that one?
I think that that's right on, because the thing is, one of the symptoms that you can tell within yourself or someone else that it is unrealistic expectation is that this one word, it's pride. Because pride will say everything has to be built around my satisfaction and my liking and my comfort. When it is about me, 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 and you're talking about a relationship, you now have a problem, because you're trying to base it, and you're trying to insulate things that uh, are to your liking and to your liking alone, and not taking into consideration the other party and what are some of their comforts and what makes them feel safe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And one of the things for me that it triggered when I read that, feel stressed and upset when things don't go as planned or your routine deviates slightly. For that one, that's an unrealistic expectation I place on myself. Like,
Right.
whoa. And I think again, it comes back from feeling like I have to be, on point, doing this, doing that. So So that's definitely one that I think we should all take inventory on and see, how do we handle things when that little bomb is dropped in your day and you weren't necessarily planning for it. To step back and breathe. Charles tells me all the time, just woosah, just breathe. So the second one here, number 2, is that whether over themselves or in others, you're going to criticize this either about yourself or others. Do you think that that is a sign to recognize of unrealistic expectation?
That again, that's another one that's on target, because when you're constantly criticizing, that means that you have already set the bar to where there is little room for grace. And when there's little room for grace, there's little room for growing. And when you have somebody to where you're making them feel like, if they are not doing this the way that you want them to, the way that you like it, again, it's now coming back to you centered. And when it's you centered, that comes back to pride. And pride says, how am I being pleased? How am I being serviced? It's about I. And that is a huge sign that it is an unrealistic expectation, because most people can't feel like they can't please themselves. So if you can't please yourself, why are you expecting that from someone else on the outside who has not even gotten a chance to know you? So that again comes back to you're being it's a form and a sign of selfishness. And when you're selfish, you are already cutting the playing field in half.
Ooh, love it. Cutting that playing field in half. That's a, that actually is a good visual. Like, I think, I love to see things in pictures. And sometimes when people consider selfish, that's a trigger, that's a defense trigger for some people. But when you envision a field and cutting it in half, like, to me, that at least allows you to see what that's doing to someone else, because it's
Right.
hard when you're already in that selfish state. You don't even see what it could possibly feel like or what it is doing to somebody else. And so I think that's great. And Charles Prinzen here says defensive mechanism. Yes, for sure. There's one more that they said was a sign to recognize. And it's if you fixate on small details and find it very important to get everything right. And that, I feel, is a huge stress. I mean, that goes back to the number one of feeling stressed. If you're with a partner who is constantly fixated on these very minute, tiny details and needs it perfect, and I mean, that's like a no-win situation there, right? So, what do
That
you feel on that
man,
one?
just that the last thing you just said, a no-win situation. It's like you put someone into a race and you tell them we're on the same team and we have a goal. Our goal is to win. And we agree. And when they say on your mark, get set, go. You didn't tell them that you, unbeknownst to them, you tied their feet to the blocks. So while everyone else is running freely, they now have something else that is preventing them from being able to win or even to fairly compete in the game without an unnecessary handicap.
Wow. Wow.
And being able to look and critique this here, you know what, that's not what I want. You know what, that's not how it's supposed to be. You know what, that, and that's why it goes back to being able to, what and who did you see growing up that was a healthy version of relationship or healthy version of a man or woman versus an unhealthy? And do you know the difference between unhealthy and healthy?
Mhm.
So, because you're only going to carry over what you thought was the thing that was the healthy. And it's sad to say, but there are a lot of people that are older, that are adults, men and women, that have carried on things that they feel like, hey, this was the thing that got me through. They're us as men, we like to fix things. Um, but have you ever experienced a man fix something, let's say like the lawnmower or a TV or something of that nature in your house, goes down? And at the moment, we use something to, we would call jimmy rig it. That
Mhm.
means to find something to make it work for the time being. A lot of times we do that within our world and within our personal lives or relationships. We find something that jimmy rigs it, and because it worked for the moment, now we take it on and feel like that will work for the mission. And something that we survived on, we think that's the thing to thrive on.
Mm.
And that's not how it works. And we feel like, hey, that worked with us when we were at our lowest point with our family. Maybe it'll work with us now. And a lot of things that helped you to get where you were going won't be the same thing that helped you to get to where you are now and to move on in the future. So
Yes.
coming back to talking about real relationships, you are you are making it un it's an unhealthy work environment when you're talking about, especially somebody who is putting effort into a relationship. You see them putting in effort, and there's nothing like putting in all your effort for somebody to turn around and say, "Nah, that's not it."
Yeah.
You feel hopeless because you now starting to see a pattern. Wait a minute. I'm trying this here and that's not good enough. I'm trying this here and that's not good enough. Now you're starting to see, man, I am up under a battle I cannot win.
Yeah.
That is the definition of unrealistic expectations, which makes me wonder, do you even want me to obtain the actual goal, which is to reach your heart? Or do you just want somebody who is being seen in the race chasing after you?
Ooh, that is a big one right there, because I do believe where we are in society today, some people just want the chase. They just want to be wanted. They want that attention and that draw in, but when it comes time to stopping and doing the work together, yeah, they're not into that, right? They're not into that. Wow. That that was a definitely a nugget for people to take tonight. And the other one, when you said survived on, the things that you survived on are not the things that you can thrive on. Um, that's a big piece too. That's a big piece too, because so often you hear people say, well, this is how I grew up, or this is what I've seen, or in the workforce, this is how we've always done it, so this is how we do it. And it's like, but is it working for you? Is it giving you
Right,
the
right.
result that you really, really want? So so as we're like coming up on like the final 10 minutes here, which I can't believe how fast this time has gone, what are some things, because you are full of value. I love speaking with you. I love hearing you speak. I learn something from you every time we communicate, and I am truly grateful for the relationship that we have. That I want to give you this space for you to share to our listeners some of those value nuggets on what you've learned through your experience with unrealistic expectations. And what are the things that can give our listeners hope today?
Well, even just somebody who is going through something right now, at this very moment, to the listeners who are hearing it, man, who is Jairrod? Who is it? Hearing me be a TEDx speaker, that's good. But hearing me and being in Brains magazine, that's good. But there are people when they're going through something. It has absolutely nothing to do with TEDx or Brains magazines or any accolades. They want to know, man, can Jairrod really say something that can help? Well, Jairrod is talking to you today from going through a broken heart, even now, even right now, as we speak, going through a healing process of a relationship that was basically just crumpled up and thrown back to me.
Yeah.
Here, I don't want this. And what I had to learn is all you really can do, because you don't know what life has to unfold. But what I can say is all you really can do is show up and do what is expected from your end. What does your effort look like? If you didn't know how the relationship was going to end or how it's going to turn out, or you put your best foot forward, and there are a lot of you who are hearing us tonight, and you're hearing the stuff that we're saying, and it's resonating with you because you're going through the similar things. You're putting forth effort in a relationship, or you're doing the things, you're showing up. You can't show up for someone else. And you definitely cannot please or perform enough for someone who does not have a clear, healthy picture of what a healthy relationship or a healthy them even looks like.
Mhm.
You're fighting a battle that it is not going to be won. And so what I would say is the best thing is you can work on what is in your hands. What's in your hands? What does that mean? Your actions is in your hands. Your self-development is in your hands. Your growth is in your hands. The good, the bad, finding out, you know what? You don't have to wait until something goes wrong to get coaching. You don't have to have something that's going wrong with you to say, you know what, maybe I should go ahead and look into therapy. Work with the things that are in your hands, because anything outside of your hands is not in your control or your responsibility. But we
Yes.
talked about taking accountability. And the first thing that you can take accountability of is what's going on within your life. Let me make sure that whether it ends great or whether it ends in chaos or it doesn't end the way that I would like it to, guess what? I can say no matter what, I showed up with a full heart. I showed up with full and the best of intentions, and I had effort, and I gave them 100% of me, because one thing they will not be able to say is that they did not encounter someone who was authentic,
Yes.
someone who meant well, someone who put their all into it. And sometimes the best thing that you can say is, you know what? I showed up and I gave everything I have and I left it on the field.
There you go. There you go. And showing up. There's a uh quote, and I can't think of who it is, but my dad, when he was dying of cancer, would repeat this. It's the one that says, like, you can't control the cards you've been dealt, but you can control how you play the hand, or something like that. And when you said, you know, you are dealt certain things, you are put in situations and just given things that maybe you didn't ask for, but here it is. And in those moments, really all you can do is look at what has fallen in your lap and think, okay, what can I make of this now for me, and show up with it. And I do know that you have pushed through, and I give you kudos. I respect you so much for the work that you're doing on yourself, as we all are doing work on ourselves 24/7. It's a never ending, we're always pushing and growing. Go ahead.
If I could say one thing and throw it out there real quick, is I would say this. For those of you and those of us who are going through things, and you learn that it is a process. Here's what I've also learned. Never allow people who are uncomfortable with your process, never allow them to rush you to say, I need to move on. No,
Yes.
you need to grow on. There are things that you go,
yes.
there are things that you were meant to not move on from. You were meant to grow on from, because there were a lot of people who moved on and they didn't grow. They just moved on.
I have to, we're going to be wrapping up in 10 seconds. Jairrod, we can continue this.
You're good.
But love it. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
From Burleson to Venus and Grandview to Godley, this is the voice of Johnson County, Joco Community Radio.